So Paul George was selected 10th overall in the 2010 NBA draft, and he arguably should have been the number one pick in this draft looking back at it. So today we're going to go over the 9 players that were drafted ahead of Paul George and see where they're at today. So first we're going to take it back and see how Paul George became this lucrative NBA prospect. So Paul George played his senior year at Knight High School before playing 2 seasons at Fresno State where he averaged 15.6 points per game. Soon after his sophomore year at Fresno, he declared for the 2010 NBA draft. And that's where Paul George was selected 10th overall by the Indiana Pacers. Since George entered the NBA, he has played for the Pacers, Thunder, and recently the Clippers. Since Paul George has arrived in the NBA, he has had multiple accomplishments throughout his career. He's a 7-time NBA All-Star, a 1-time All-NBA First Team, a 5-time NBA All-Third Team, a 2-time All-NBA Defensive Team, a 4-time All-Defensive NBA Team, an NBA All-Rookie selection, and Most Improved Player in 2013, and finished 3rd in MVP voting in 2018 while playing alongside Russell Westbrook and Carmelo Anthony. So Paul George had a great career so far, so let's see who are the 9 players drafted ahead of him. So the first pick in the NBA draft, the Washington Wizards select a 6'3" point guard freshman from Kentucky, John Wall. Wall in his 1 year at Kentucky averaged 16 points and 6 assists. After his freshman season, he declared for the 2010 NBA draft. And heading into this draft, John Wall was looked at as a consensus number 1 pick. Wall had a strong start to his career for the Washington Wizards, averaging 16.4 points, 8.3 assists as a rookie. Wall ended up having 9 great seasons for the Washington Wizards with minimal playoff success, and then he was traded to the Houston Rockets in 2020 in exchange for Russell Westbrook. Wall played 1 season for the Houston Rockets in 2020-2021 during the James Harden trade saga and ended up missing the playoffs with the Rockets team. After sitting out of the 2022 NBA season, the Houston Rockets bought out John Wall, and now he's a member of the Clippers heading into this season. Wall's had plenty ups and downs to his career, and we're all rooting for his success on the new-look Clippers. With the second pick in the NBA draft, the Philadelphia 76ers selected the 6'6" forward from Ohio State, Evan Turner. Turner in his 3 years playing for Ohio State averaged 15 points and 4 assists. Turner's ability to playmake from the wing position what really stood out to scouts. Turner was really before his time with a playmaking ability that he had. That is why he went number 2 overall in this draft. But with that said, Turner's career has been pretty underwhelming for the 2nd overall pick. Turner ended up playing 4 seasons for the Sixers while averaging 11 points and 4 assists. And then in the summer of 2016, after a stint with the Boston Celtics, he signed a massive $70 million deal with the Portland Trail Blazers. And to say the least, he was significantly overpaid for his production on the court. He had a couple solid years in Portland, but nothing that really stood out. And then his last season was in 2020, where he played only 19 games for the Atlanta Hawks, where he only averaged 3 points. Turner's yet to be on another NBA team since then, and is more than likely that his NBA career is over. Of the 3rd pick in the NBA draft, the Utah Jazz selected Derek Favors, the 6'9", 250-pound forward center. Favors had a decent career so far, but unfortunately, he was just another one of those guys that was drafted in the wrong era. He was too small to play the center position at just 6'9", and he was not skilled enough to play the 4. And he had more of the back-to-basket offense that is no longer really a valuable asset in this league. With that said, he still penned out a nice career for himself, putting up averages of 10 points and 7 rebounds. Favors played his 10 first seasons in the NBA of the Utah Jazz, and then 3 seasons between the Nets, Pelicans, and the Thunder. He is currently a member of the Thunder, but not expected to get any playing time at all. If Favors were drafted either in the 80s or the 90s, his career would maybe looked at a lot differently. Now, with the 4th pick in the NBA draft, the Minnesota Timberwolves selected 6'7" forward Wesley Johnson from Syracuse. Johnson had a pretty underwhelming career to be the 4th pick at just averaging 7 points for his career. Johnson was always looked at as like a decent 3-and-D role player, as the NBA has coveted that type of player more and more throughout the years, but he never really got the 3-point shot down, and his defense was average. Johnson has been quite the journeyman throughout his career. He played for the Wolves, the Suns, Lakers, Clippers, and the Pelicans. In his last season in the NBA was 2019, playing for the Washington Wizards, where he really didn't do much, and that is why he is no longer an NBA team, and just like Evan Turner, his career is most likely over. With the 5th pick in the NBA draft, the Sacramento Kings selected 6'10" freshman DeMarcus Cousins from Kentucky. Cousins had a very strong start to his career in Sacramento, but in great Kings fashion, they continued to make the playoffs, although DeMarcus Cousins became an all-star in his 5th season. Now, DeMarcus had a reputation of being a hothead, and eventually the tension between the Kings and DeMarcus became too strong, so they ended up trading him during the 2017 All-Star Game to New Orleans Pelicans for Buddy Hield. Just before DeMarcus Cousins' first postseason run, he tore his Achilles in 2018, and his career will never be the same since then. Since the major injuries, others have followed, just like a torn ACL and a torn quad. Since then, he's played for the Warriors, Rockets, Clippers, Bucks, and the Denver Nuggets. Currently in 2022, DeMarcus Cousins is looking for a job, and I'm still kind of surprised he doesn't have one. I thought he was a pretty reasonable role backup center for Nikola Jokic. But with that said, it's incredibly sad how DeMarcus Cousins' career really turned out. It just really goes to show how your career can flip on your head in a matter of seconds. I mean, right before he tore his Achilles, he was putting up like 40-point, 20-rebound games and looked at as the best center in the NBA and was in the MVP conversations. And with the 6th pick in the NBA draft, the Golden State Warriors selected Epke Udoh. Epke, who the fuck is that? I bet Golden State fans can't name this guy. And with the 7th pick in the NBA draft, the Detroit Pistons selected 6'11" big man from Georgetown, Greg Monroe. Greg Monroe was another one of those guys who was drafted in the wrong era. If Monroe played in the 80s and 90s, he'd absolutely slayed. But unfortunately, he was drafted in 2010. Monroe was a classic back-to-the-basket power forward who had a nice mid-range game and had great post moves, but he was not the shot blocker, athletic big to play the center spot, and he wasn't skilled enough and couldn't step out and shoot the three-pointer that power forwards need to do in this era. With that said, Monroe still had a pretty decent career, averaging 13 points and 8 rebounds. He's also been quite the journeyman, playing for 9 NBA teams. He got some run during the COVID times when teams needed to fill their rosters before games, but really showed no improvement and was still the same player we saw in 2010. Just teams aren't really looking for his skill set anymore, so he kind of been phased out of the league. Now, the 8th pick in the NBA draft, the Los Angeles Clippers selected the 6'9" sophomore forward from Wake Forest, Alfredo Camino. Camino had a very underwhelming rookie season, averaging just 6 points, and after his rookie season, he was traded to New Orleans Pelicans in the exchange for Chris Paul. Since then, he's become a very solid 3-and-D player for almost any team he's played on. The 3-and-D has been a very coveted asset for every team. Every team needs about 2, 3, 4, 5 of the guys, and he just always found a spot to get good minutes and have good production on an NBA team. Nothing about Amino's game really jumped out at you. Amino has played for the Clippers, Pelicans, Mavericks, Trailblazers, and the Magic, and his last stint was in 2021 for the Chicago Bulls, where he only played a handful of games and didn't really get much playing time. Amino's NBA career days are most likely over, but he was a really good player when he did, and he gave teams exactly what they needed at the time. And the 9th pick in the NBA draft, the Utah Jazz selected 6'8" sophomore forward from Butler, Gordon Hayward. Now, Hayward had a slow start to his career in Utah. However, in his 5th season, he became a 20-point per game scorer who was the main focal point on offense. In 2017, Hayward was selected to his first All-Star team as a part of the Utah Jazz. But during the summer of 2018, shortly after his first All-Star selection, he signed a max contract with the Boston Celtics to team up with Kyrie Irving and Al Horford, and with his former college coach, Brad Stevens. But unfortunately for Hayward, this is where it starts to go south for him. During the season opener in 2017, he had a gruesome low leg injury that would derail his career, and he would never seem to stay healthy after that. Now, as a Boston fan, I was watching this game live, and when this happened, I literally went into shock. This was the most gruesome injury I've seen on live television, and with that injury, it pretty much the season was over. At least that's what I thought. However, it was a blessing in disguise for the Celtics because the emergence of Jason Tatum came right after that. So it didn't work out for Gordon Hayward, but I think it worked out in the best interest for the Boston Celtics. In 2018, Gordon Hayward signed another very large deal with the Charlotte Hornets, where he's been playing at a very high level starter caliber player, but the same story is repeating itself. He just can't seem to stay healthy, whether it's a hand injury or an ankle injury or a knee injury. Unfortunately, his body is just giving out on his early 30s. But when he's playing as a good productive player, as of right now, he's still a big question mark for that team. And with the 10th pick in the NBA draft, the Indiana Pacers select Paul George.